The greatest illusion ever sold to men is not that money buys happiness. The greatest illusion is that money is earned through effort. From the moment you enter school, you are trained like a soldier for a battlefield that does not exist. You are taught that obedience produces security, that endurance produces reward, that loyalty produces prosperity. Yet when you step into the real world, you discover something unsettling. The men who work the longest hours are rarely the ones who rise. The men who sacrifice the most often remain exactly where they started. Meanwhile, a smaller class of men seem to grow richer almost effortlessly, as if wealth is magnetized to them. This is not chance. It is not corruption alone. It is position. Machiavelli never believed power was distributed fairly. He observed that history is shaped not by who is virtuous, but by who occupies the advantageous ground. Armies did not win wars because they were brave. They won because they controlled bridges, ports, supply routes, and high terrain. Once the terrain was secured, victory became almost automatic. The modern economy functions the same way. Wealth flows like an army on the march, and it obeys geography, not morality. Those who control the strategic positions where money must pass do not need to chase wealth. Wealth passes through them. Most men live their entire lives inside the flow. They are inside the machinery of production, inside the movement of labor, inside the rush of deadlines and demands. They believe motion is progress. They believe exhaustion is evidence of advancement. But motion without control is just friction. A hamster runs endlessly while remaining in the same place. The working man is not poor because he lacks discipline. He is poor because he exists inside the river instead of above it. The rich man rarely swims harder. He stands where the current narrows. He positions himself where value must concentrate. He does not ask how much effort is required. He asks where effort is already flowing. And then he claims ownership of that passage. This is the law of position. Money does not accumulate where work is hardest. It accumulates where movement is unavoidable. Just as merchants once grew wealthy by controlling ports instead of sailing ships, modern elites grow wealthy by controlling platforms instead of performing tasks. They do not write every line of code. They do not create every product. They do not manage every transaction. They own the structure through which creation must travel. Machiavelli understood that the throne mattered more than the king. A weak ruler seated on a powerful throne remained dominant. A strong man placed on unstable ground fell quickly. Power was architectural. The chair carried authority long after the man was gone. Wealth works the same way. When you own the structure, the flow continues regardless of your daily effort. When you only supply energy, you are replaceable. This is why some men grow rich in their sleep while others collapse from fatigue and remain stuck. The modern worker believes income comes from performance. The strategist understands income comes from leverage. Performance scales linearly. Leverage scales exponentially. A man trading hours for wages is capped by biology. There are only so many hours a body can function. But a man who owns systems, contracts, platforms, or equity is not bound by time. His position multiplies every unit of effort poured into the structure. You can double your effort and see marginal improvement. You can shift your position and see your results transform without increasing effort at all. This is why two men of equal intelligence and ambition can live radically different financial lives. One perfects his craft endlessly. The other claims the gate through which that craft must pass. One becomes exceptional labor, the other becomes unavoidable infrastructure. The tragedy is that society praises the wrong man. We applaud the hardest worker. We admire the most disciplined grinder. We celebrate the man who sacrifices everything for productivity. Meanwhile, the man who quietly acquires ownership is invisible until the gap becomes impossible to ignore. Machiavelli would have called this predictable. He wrote that fortune favors those who prepare the terrain, not those who merely react to events. The modern rich are not luckier. They are positioned. They are upstream, and gravity always pays upstream. Most men spend their lives fighting the flow, attempting to outwork physics. They stack effort on top of effort, believing intensity will compensate for disadvantage. But intensity cannot defeat structure. Water does not argue with a dam. It does not outmuscle the channel. It simply flows where it is directed. The moment you understand this, your exhaustion begins to make sense. You were never weak. You were simply standing in the wrong place. If you watch history carefully, you'll notice something unsettling. The men who shaped empires were rarely the men who fought hardest on the battlefield. The foot soldiers bled. The generals maneuvered. The kings chose where the battles would happen. Power accumulated upward, not because the rulers worked harder, but because they controlled the map. Machiavelli observed that once a prince secured strategic ground, resistance became expensive and rebellion became nearly impossible. The terrain itself enforced dominance. Modern economics operates by the same invisible cartography. Every industry has pressure points where value compresses. These are not the places where people sweat. They are the places where decisions, access, ownership, and distribution converge. Whoever occupies these pressure points captures disproportionate reward regardless of effort. The worker exists inside the current. The positioned man controls the channel. This is why societies can be filled with talented, exhausted people, while wealth quietly concentrates in fewer hands. The system is not malfunctioning. It is performing exactly as structural leverage dictates. Machiavelli warned that men often confuse motion for power. They believe constant activity creates influence, but activity without authority is dependency. The soldier marches endlessly while the commander moves the chess pieces once. The worker completes endless tasks while the owner signs one contract. Effort is loud. Position is silent. This silence is what blinds most men. A man can spend 20 years mastering a craft, becoming nearly irreplaceable at the technical level, yet remain permanently trapped because his leverage remains fixed at 1-to-1. He trades time for money, skill for wages. The moment he stops, income stops. The system rewards him just enough to survive comfortably, but never enough to escape. Meanwhile, another man may possess only average ability, yet sits where hundreds or thousands of productive people feed into his structure. His leverage is not in talent, but in placement. Each decision he makes influences massive flows of value. This is not unfairness, it is geometry. Power always accumulates at nodes of concentration. In medieval cities, whoever controlled the bridge collected tolls. Merchants did not need to build ships. They needed ownership of ports. In the industrial age, factory owners became wealthy not by producing goods with their own hands, but by owning the machinery that multiplied labor. In the digital age, platform owners dominate not by creating content, but by controlling distribution. Creation generates value. Position captures it. The fatal mistake of most men is dedicating their lives exclusively to creation while ignoring capture entirely. They become highly efficient engines inside machines owned by others. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately as structural dependence. He warned rulers never to rely solely on mercenaries because they fight without loyalty and drain resources without securing power. The modern worker is a mercenary of productivity, endlessly producing while never gaining control. The true seat of power is not in effort, it is in ownership of the channel. This is why wealth compounds for those already positioned while stagnating for those who labor. Once you own the structure, growth becomes automatic. The flow increases with scale. The positioned man benefits from every technological advance, every productivity improvement, every expansion of markets. The worker must constantly chase just to maintain stability. When automation rises, the owner profits while the laborer competes for shrinking roles. When globalization expands, the owner scales while the worker faces wage pressure. When efficiency increases, the structure captures the gain while the worker receives marginal relief. Position absorbs progress, effort absorbs exhaustion. This is the quiet reason why productivity has soared over decades, while average wages barely move. The system did not forget workers, it simply rewards leverage over labor. Machiavelli taught that the wise ruler designs systems where outcomes favor him without constant intervention. The modern wealthy do the same. They do not micromanage success. They place themselves where success must pass. Once positioned, time itself becomes an ally. Every year that passes strengthens their hold. Networks deepen, assets grow, influence compounds. Meanwhile, the unpositioned man ages with little to show for decades of effort. This is not because he failed. It is because he fought the wrong war. The war was never against laziness. It was against structural disadvantage. Until you secure leverage, your effort will always be taxed by gravity. And gravity always pulls wealth toward position. Once a man begins to understand that wealth follows position rather than effort, another question inevitably rises in his mind, a question far more uncomfortable than ignorance ever was. If the structure is real, if leverage truly governs outcomes, why does nearly everyone remain trapped in the lowest tiers of the economic hierarchy generation after generation? The answer is not simply that most men lack intelligence or opportunity. The answer is that the system does not rely on force to keep people in place. It relies on comfort, identity, and psychological conditioning so subtle that those inside it rarely recognize the boundaries of their cage. Machiavelli understood that power is most stable when it no longer needs to be enforced. A population that believes its routine is safety will defend that routine even when it quietly impoverishes them. The modern salary functions exactly this way. It is not merely compensation for labor, but a behavioral anchor that shapes how a man perceives time, risk, and possibility. The predictable rhythm of payment slowly trains the nervous system to prioritize short-term stability over long-term leverage. Over years, ambition is not destroyed in one dramatic moment, but softened into practicality, transformed from the hunger to build into the desire to remain comfortable. This conditioning explains why so many intelligent men remain in positions they privately know are limiting. They do not stay because the work fulfills them. They stay because the certainty of income has replaced the courage of strategy. Their thinking shrinks from decades into weeks, from ownership into bills, from building systems into surviving cycles. The positioned man designs structures that operate beyond his presence. The laboring man structures his entire life around the next deposit. One is building terrain. The other is pacing inside it. Alongside comfort grows identity. And identity is far harder to escape than poverty itself. After years of sacrifice, men begin to define their worth through struggle. They take pride in endurance, in reliability, in being the man who never quits. What begins as discipline slowly becomes a psychological trap. To admit that relentless effort without leverage was strategically flawed would feel like invalidating one's entire past. The ego resists this violently. It is easier to believe the world is unjust than to accept that the wrong game was played faithfully. Machiavelli warned that men become loyal to roles that give them meaning, even when those roles drain them of power. Once suffering is moralized, it becomes untouchable. The worker who has built his identity around sacrifice will defend his exhaustion as virtue. He will mock the owner as lucky or unethical because doing so protects his self-image. In this way, the system does not need to suppress rebellion. The trapped defend the structure themselves. Then there is the great illusion of safety, the belief that employment is security while ownership is danger. Society portrays the entrepreneur as reckless and the employee as responsible, yet this narrative inverts reality completely. The man who relies on a single income source lives one corporate decision away from financial collapse. His entire life rests on a connection he does not control. The positioned man may experience volatility, but he also possesses leverage, flexibility, and multiple streams of influence. When one channel weakens, he shifts to another. Dependency is fragile. Control is resilient. Machiavelli taught that true power lies in reducing reliance on forces outside your command. The modern worker does the opposite. He concentrates risk into one employer, one industry, one paycheck, while being told he is playing it safe. The owner disperses risk across structures while being labeled a gambler. This psychological reversal keeps millions locked into vulnerable positions while believing they are being prudent. Finally, there is the gravity of the crowd. Most men remain where they are because everyone around them is there too. Shared struggle creates emotional comfort. When exhaustion is common, it feels normal. When dissatisfaction is universal, it feels inevitable. The herd provides reassurance even as it marches toward stagnation. To step out of it requires isolation, uncertainty, and the willingness to look foolish before results appear. Most people would rather suffer collectively than risk alone. Machiavelli observed that rulers maintain stability by keeping populations occupied and invested in routine. A man who is tired does not challenge structure. A man who is busy does not study leverage. A man consumed by survival rarely builds power. The system does not need to crush ambition. It simply needs to distract it long enough for years to pass. And so the majority remain downstream, working harder each decade while ownership quietly consolidates upstream. Not because they are incapable of rising, but because psychology has been engineered to keep them running in place. The rich do not only possess better positions, they have escaped the mental cages that prevent movement toward those positions in the first place. When a man finally understands the law of position, his relationship with money, effort, and ambition undergoes a quiet but irreversible transformation. He stops asking how hard he should work and begins asking where his work is being directed. He no longer measures progress by exhaustion, but by control. The endless motion that once consumed his days starts to look like energy being poured into structures owned by others, and for the first time he sees the hidden tax he has been paying for years, the tax of misplacement. Machiavelli never advised princes to chase opportunity. He advised them to secure terrain. Fortune, he argued, flows toward those who shape conditions rather than those who react to them. The modern rich live by this principle, whether they have read Machiavelli or not. They position themselves where money must move, where decisions are unavoidable, where systems compound without constant labor. They do not compete in crowded fields where margins collapse and effort multiplies. They build or acquire the narrow bridges through which entire industries must pass. Once you grasp this, the world stops feeling chaotic and starts looking mechanical. You see why certain men rise regardless of economic storms, while others struggle even during booms. You understand why recessions destroy workers but create billionaires. When flows tighten, only those who own the channels survive comfortably. When markets expand, owners capture exponential upside. Position insulates both from downside and magnifies upside, while labor absorbs the shock in every direction. This is why wealth is rarely lost by those who understand leverage and frequently lost by those who inherit money without understanding structure. The fortune disappears not through bad luck but through mispositioning. They sell assets, consume capital, abandon leverage, and drift back into the downstream current where effort replaces control. Meanwhile, the disciplined strategist continues acquiring choke points, access, ownership, and influence, knowing that once secured, the flow will do the rest. Your future will not be determined by how busy you remain. It will be determined by whether you transition from energy supplier to structure owner. As long as you exist only as a producer of effort, you will always compete with those willing to accept less. But the moment you become a controller of channels, you step out of competition entirely. Monopolies are not created by being the best worker. They are created by being unavoidable. This is the ruthless clarity Machiavelli offered the world centuries ago. Power belongs to those who understand terrain. Wealth belongs to those who understand leverage. Freedom belongs to those who control structure rather than serve it. Everything else is merely movement inside systems designed by someone else. The law of position does not care about your intentions. It does not reward morality, loyalty, or endurance. It rewards strategic placement. It rewards ownership. It rewards those who stop reacting and start shaping. This is how rich men get richer, not through luck, not through hustle, not through working themselves into exhaustion, but through positioning themselves where value is forced to flow. If this narration shifted how you see money, power, and effort, then you are already thinking at a higher level than most. Like the video so the algorithm shows it to men who are still trapped in the grind. Subscribe for more deep Machiavellian strategy on wealth, power, and human behavior. And if you want to go even deeper into the unseen mechanics that govern success and control, check the link in the description where I share advanced frameworks I can't cover publicly. The world is not unfair, it is structural. And once you learn the structure, you stop struggling against gravity and start using it.